Sure.
Hello and welcome to our presentation. Today we'll be starting with an introduction to the N language.
The sound just stopped suddenly. I don't know.
Conclusion and outlook.
Oh,
Sorry about that. I'll keep my mic
The N
on.
language is part of the Austroasiatic family in the Pelagic subbranch, WAIC. And its exonym is N, typical in the literature, though the people themselves call themselves Va. It's located in eastern Shan State, Myanmar, about 6,000 to 7,000 speakers, and has some previous research done on tone. In 2016, Shintani documented 2 tones in N, and then last year I discussed 3 tones that I found in N at the last SEALS meeting in Taiwan. There's a related variety in China, Yingla Va, which has 3 tones, and I also argued that these are probably, N and Yingla Va are probably part of the same language, or very closely related. N has 3 lexical tones, and our auditory impressions of the 3 tones are like this. There's the falling tone has high falling pitch and modal voice quality. For example, the word sang, bone. The rising tone has low to rising pitch with breathy phonation often. And an example is the word elephant, sang. And the low tone has mid-falling pitch and breathy phonation, sang, beanpole. However, although we see those patterns I just described on nouns in isolation, there's 2 cases of tonal variation on nouns. And the first one is where we see in the falling tone, the falling pitch becomes rising after a demonstrative, and also with a third singular possessor. And we suspect that tone is spreading across from the noun onto the third singular possessor. So again, we see the falling pitch of the falling tone turn to rising in these contexts. And we also see another variation with the low tone, where the low tone goes from breathy phonation to tense voice quality. And we see this in the same positions after the demonstrative. The noun becomes tense, the breathy tone noun becomes tense, and with the third singular possessor, it also becomes tense. The motivation for our study is to first look at how pitch and voice quality play a role in upholding contrast with tones in isolation form nouns, and then look at how pitch and voice quality change in certain syntactically conditioned environments. Today's talk will focus on tonal variation on nouns. We also did investigate verbs, but we'll be looking at that more in the future. Our research questions, again, we want to look at isolation form and then in 2 syntactic contexts, which is research question 4 and 5. The others have to do with verbs, and we'll cover that elsewhere.
Okay, turning to the methodology now. We assembled different word lists for each of 5 experiments, one to address each research question. In total, we recorded 1,218 tokens. Our participants were 7 N speakers, aged 18 to 35, all from the same village, all grew up speaking N in the home, and all report being literate in both N and Burmese. The data was collected in Masai here in Thailand in a recording studio. We used a condenser headset mic through a Zoom H4n recording device directly onto the computer hard drive for storage. The prompts were prepared and shown using the speech recorder software. And the prompts were in written Burmese, which the speakers then translated into N. We annotated the data in prot. We first generated draft text grids using mouse forced aligner, which we then hand corrected ourselves. The data was then extracted using prot sauce. So we're investigating pitch and voice quality. That's what we'll talk about today. So we did measure F0 and spectral tilt, which is the corrected difference in amplitude of the first and second harmonic. We also are looking at rhyme duration and central peak prominence, but we will not discuss them today. We created plots in Python using plot9, and the data you will see today is normalized by speaker. You'll see the z-scores by speaker, and we've normalized time from 0 equals onset of voicing to 1 is the end of the rhyme. So the results for experiment 1, these were nouns in isolation, like this. So we had 6 words that are listed at the bottom here, 2 for each tone, 2 repetitions of each word across 7 speakers. And here are the results of experiment 1. These, in fact, match our expectations. As we mentioned at the beginning, we expect that the rising tone, which is red here, will have a rising pitch contour, as you can see on the left, and falling and low tones both have falling pitch contours. Falling and low, in addition, are distinct in terms of pitch because falling has globally higher pitch values. In terms of voice quality, again, we see what we expect. A higher spectral tilt measurement is a proxy for breathiness, and so the low tone, which is the most saliently breathy tone to us, at least auditorily, we have low tone with the highest spectral tilt measurements here, and a falling tone with the lowest, meaning it's the least breathy or most modal. Rising tone in red is intermediate between the two, which also matches what we expect. Rising tone seems less reliably breathy than low in isolation. These results are also consistent across speakers, though we're only showing the aggregate results here. As for experiment 4, this was where we were investigating demonstrative plus noun phrases. So in this environment is where we see the change from falling to rising pitch contours. So if we listen to the underlyingly rising tone elephant word, and then that elephant, the word song, still has a rising contour. Now bone has a falling contour, but when produced after the demonstrative, it becomes rising. So in this experiment, we combined 2 demonstratives with nouns carrying each of the 3 tones, and to investigate the changes in the acoustic correlates of the tones in this context. So here we're comparing the results of experiment 1 across the top with the results of experiment 4 on the bottom. We can see that the falling tone, the green line, is falling in the top left box, isolation, but after the demonstrative on the bottom, it has taken on a rising contour. For the voice quality results, we see the change we expected affecting low tone here. In the top right box, low tone has the highest spectral tilt measures in isolation forms, but at the bottom right shows that low tone now has the lowest spectral tilt measurements, corresponding to the tensing of this tone that we expected to find here. We also note that the difference of spectral tilt measures between falling and rising is quite distinct here, and this is probably to enhance the perceptibility of falling and rising tones in this environment where their pitch contours have coalesced. Finally, the results for experiment 5 now. These were the constructions where we have noun plus third singular possessor. So here again, we have underlyingly falling tone words like bone becoming rising. And here we note that the rising contour seems to stretch across both syllables, where the fall is mostly on sang and the rise is mostly on hun. And this is overlapping with the underlyingly rising tone elephant, where we have a similar pitch contour across two syllables. Now, for low tone, in isolation form, it sounds quite breathy. Here's beanpole. And when it precedes the third singular pronoun, it becomes much tenser. Now let's look at the results for experiment 5. Here we have the results of experiment 1 across the top and experiment 5 across the bottom. The vertical line in the experiment 5 plots represents the transition from the first to second syllable. So the noun on the left, the pronoun on the right. If we look at the bottom left plot, we see that the falling tone, the green line, has taken on a rising contour, as in the previous experiment. If we look on the right, again, we have an inversion of the expected order for spectral tilt, where the breathy low tones from experiment 1 have become the least breathy tones in experiment 5.
For the discussion section of our presentation, there'll be 3 different topics. The first is the overlapping realizations of falling and rising tones. To review, we've got these 2 patterns that we see in isolation. We have a clear differentiation of falling and rising pitch, but in the second pattern, in experiments 4 and 5, we have the pitch contours converging for falling and rising. We've got these 2 main patterns again. The thing to note here is that the contrast is maintained not by the pitch, but by voice quality for the second pattern in experiments 4 and 5. One possibility for this convergence is a historical association of both the rising tone and the falling tone with a historical voiceless onset, and also with high register, which is found in the Wa language. The second discussion topic is about the conditioning factor for these 2 patterns. One possibility is that it has to do with the utterance position. For example, whether it's initial or final. In experiment 1, the isolation form was in the initial position, and in 4 and 5, in the final position. And in experiment 5, the noun was not strictly at the end of the utterance, but because we think the tone is spreading there onto the hun, the third singular possessor pronoun, it could be considered as in final position. Another option is that the conditioning factor is something to do with the syntactic construction itself, the demonstrative noun construction and the noun pronoun construction. The third discussion topic is on tone spreading. In experiment 5, we looked at a combination of noun plus third singular possessor pronoun, and we have plotted the pitch and the spectral tilt in these 2 plots that you see here. On the left, for the pitch, you can see that the blue low tone and then the pronoun hun both have a low pitch target, and this is being overridden by the falling and rising tones, which you see on the second syllable, where they're both rising. And it's unclear why falling would become rising in this environment because it's not phonetically motivated, but perhaps it reflects a regular rule from a time before the falling and rising tone became contrastive. And you can remember back that both the falling and rising are associated with a historical voiceless onset and high register. And it's possible they have a shared precursor, which had rising pitch in this construction and which still persists. You'll notice on the right that unlike pitch, hun retains its breathiness. So the breathiness is not overridden by the other tones. All of them remain breathy on that hun syllable. In conclusion, we see that the three contrastive tones are phonetically differentiated, but depending on the environment, the phonetic cues that uphold the contrast change. And we see two patterns. We see pattern one where nouns are utterance initial or in isolation form, and pattern two where the nouns are utterance final in particular syntactic constructions. And for these two patterns, pitch and voice quality are combining in different ways to uphold the contrast. You can see in pattern one, the falling and low are distinguished by their voice quality, and in pattern two, the rising and falling are distinguished by their voice quality. Some continuing work that we'd like to pursue is to look at verbs, the tonal realization on verbs. We have identified two patterns auditorily, but we want to record a follow-up experiment and try to clarify. We'd also like to hand correct more of the current data so we can plot across multiple syllables. Some of the syllables we haven't plotted yet, for example, the demonstrative marker due to time constraints. And we'd also like to investigate and think about how these patterns might affect orthography development. What are the implications for a deep versus a shallow orthography? For example, when falling tone has a rising contour, would we then write it like a rising tone or not? We'd like to thank you, the listeners, and also thank the N volunteer participants that helped us with this study, and also to thank the Northern Training Units of the Linguistics Institute of Puyallup University for use of their facilities and recording equipment. Thank you. Hello and welcome to our presentation. Today will be...
Once is enough, I think.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I don't see any questions yet in the chat. Does anyone have a question? You can either write them in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, Matthias asked, are all nouns affected by the changes?
Well, the nouns, it affects nouns that have falling tone or low tone in the ways that we highlighted there. And so as far as we know, if a noun has falling tone and it occurs in a pattern 2 environment, it will take on rising pitch. And if it is a low tone, it will change from breathy to markedly tense. So there doesn't appear to be classes of nouns that behave differently as far as we can tell, but it remains possible, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just jump into. We just looked at monosyllables, so we didn't look at. There are some nouns that have like a pre-syllable. We didn't look at. There are some loan words that we didn't look at. So it was, I guess, the study was confined to that one set of nouns, monosyllables. So we're not quite sure about that.
Okay,
Actually, I was
uh,
gonna say, I just remembered that we did have to exclude a word. Remember the copper word, because it was a Sean word and it did not do what we expected. And so, yeah, yeah, maybe.
but it didn't have like random distribution or random affectedness of nouns, right? Like we get in Tanao, where there is this tone change thing in certain contexts, which looks similar to what you have in N, but we haven't found a pattern yet which nouns or which words are affected by it and which are not. So this seems to be different, right?
Right. No, there was nothing like that where it just seemed like if the noun in isolation was falling tone, for example, then it behaved like this rising variance regardless.
Okay, so it's a different scenario in this case.
I
Thanks.
guess so. It's maybe an easier problem than Tanal. Lucky for us.
It looks like, yes.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I will just ask about, yeah, you mentioned the Shan loan word, the word for copper, right? You said it didn't behave like you expected, right? Means like it didn't undergo any change, or
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what happened. Do you?
Yeah, the tone didn't change, like, I think according to what we.
Right. They just kind of were saying it the same way. So somehow they were preserving the the Shan tone maybe, or we didn't really have a chance to look into it further as it was happening on data collection day, and we just sort of struck it from the list. But yeah,
it would be interesting to look at the at Thai loan words, because what we see in Prai, for example, we also have like this phenomena with like tone changes in possessive constructions or after in certain contexts. But Thai loan words that have the rising tone are not affected by these changes. They keep the rising tone no matter what. So they a special class of words. Another question I wanted to ask is, to what extent have you looked at the different triggers, right? Like you said, like demonstratives. For example, have you looked at, I don't know, interrogatives? Are they before or after the noun? Like if you ask, for example, which bone would be before or after the noun, and does it trigger the same change or not?
go ahead.
We haven't looked at that. The question words, some of them come before and some come after, but we haven't looked at that quite yet. Interesting question.
I see that there's a question by Greg in the chat. Why do you think these two combinations, demonstrative plus noun and noun plus third possessive, show this interaction? Are they the only elements that show this, or the only ones you have noticed so far? Okay, yes, similar question.
I'm not certain. I mean, I'm interested in whether these grammatical morphemes are have a tendency for the tone to spread, and whether that's the conditioning factor. I'm not sure. Ryan, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, like we kind of said in the talk, we kind of think it's tied to certain syntactic constructions, yeah, and we don't really know exactly why it would be just these. We sort of hinted at the fact that there's a lot to talk about with verbs too, and actually verbs in certain constructions also show the same structured pattern of variation, where like falling becomes a rising pitch and stuff like that. So it's almost like it's conventionalized, grammaticalized kind of thing, or as we suggested in the talk, it may actually be a retention from a time when there was no split between these two tones, falling and rising, and they were already developing these pitch-based interactions with the syntax. There's a lot more to look into. We really don't know why it's just these so far, or what's special about them. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? I don't see
Can I
anything.
follow up on that just quickly? Does that mean that there are other grammatical elements that don't show it, or that like a plural, or like a plural word, or like a, you know, some kind of adposition or something that might possibly be grammatical in some way that doesn't show it or something? I'm just trying to get my head around why those two categories alone would show it, unless it was something inherent in the phonology of those things themselves that triggers this type of thing, you know, which means that maybe they're in some kind of different status, clitic status or something. I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have noticed it elsewhere. There are some other contexts we could look at. For example, like following certain clause level markers. There's tone changes that happen. But these are I guess these few cases are the ones that were causing us the most problems with during orthography development and deciding how to write them. And really, it was as the people were writing things, I started to notice these changes, and then wanted to investigate it more and to decide, you know, what's the best way to handle this, and really wanted to know what's going on acoustically and what's the most salient feature. So there are some other parts of the grammar that do this, but we just picked some really I guess the most important ones that were coming up.
Yeah, the goal of continuing grammatical work on the language would be to, you know, identify a good list of all the places where nouns are affected by this pattern, this variation, and where verbs are, and whatever else might be happening. But as far as we can tell so far, it's very much a part of the phonology syntax interface of this language, and we just need to do more tests and elicitation and etc. So.
Okay. We still have time for one or two more questions. Maybe people just want to have a longer break. So last chance if you want to ask a question. Okay, so let's thank our speakers one more time. It was very interesting, and see you after the break. Thank you, Ryan and Shane.
Thanks.